Hola, this is Enrique Morones of Gente Unida. And most importantly, today we're talking about Chicano Park, and we have Buen Hombre, Magnificent Mujer, our weekly podcast brought to you by your host, Enrique Morones, and our producer, Sarah Vela. So we're delighted to be talking to some community leaders, influence makers, and people that are in the know, and people you should get to know, because these people have influenced my life, and hopefully they'll influence yours, because that's what it's all about. All of us sharing the knowledge, spreading the wealth, and remembering the history of our elders, in the case of Chicano Park, but also the people that are the movers and shakers right now. And today we're going to talk to one of them. And he's definitely a buen hombre, and he's involved with a great organization that many of us have known for many years. I believe it started around 1980, and it's called the Environmental Health Coalition. And today we're going to be speaking with Jorge Gonzalez. Jorge, how you doing, brother?
Doing great. Working from home, and happy to be here with you guys.
Well, delighted to have you. I know you got a couple of young children. How's the family, and how's everybody doing under this situation that we're all in?
We're managing. We're keeping busy in the garden, doing homeschooling, and adapting. Every day is a challenge, but we somehow managed to make it all work and balance it all out. Finding activities with the kids, doing urban walks these days is how we're keeping active and finding that balance.
Well, my best wishes to your family. I know that they're young ones. Your kids are really young. Now, today we're saying talking about Chicano Park. This is a very special week. The 50th anniversary is this week. So all year during Buen Hombre, Magnificent Mujer, amongst our many shows and podcasts, a lot of them will be with people that are the influence makers, the people that have helped develop Chicano Park, and the people that are keeping it alive. And so before we get started with the big question that I ask, which is, what does Chicano Park mean to me? Who is Jorge Gonzalez? Give us a thumbnail sketch on who you are so people know who we're talking about. Where were you born? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was born in Los Angeles, but raised at the age of 4 in San Isidro at the border community. Consider myself another border hybrid, border fronterizo. Part of my life was, crossing the border every day. So I'm familiar with that, that region, Baja. I was part of the 80s, 90s generation growing up in San Isidro during a critical time with regards to border enforcement. And then I really got to go to college and stepped out of, I guess, this region for a minute. So I got to, go to a university at UC Davis and then UC Santa Barbara, where I got my master's. And then I thought I'd come back to my community and help out in the front line. So I started organizing, and I did faith-based, and then I did, some work around immigration and criminal justice work. And then I decided to do some organizing around environmental justice.
Environmental justice. So you went to Southwest High, then UC Davis, and then Santa Barbara?
Correct.
Wow, it's very impressive. It's and then the environmental justice work is very, very important, and boy, is it important right now. So I know that you're involved. You work for the Environmental Health Coalition. What is the Environmental Health Coalition?
Well, the Environmental Health Coalition is a nonprofit organization, nonpartisan, in the city of San Diego, predominantly working here in San Diego. However, we also do binational work. We also do environmental justice in Tijuana, in a community called Chilpancingo. In short, environmental justice tries to assure that everybody has, and when we say everybody, I think we specifically talk about marginalized communities, communities of color, where environmental injustice is prevalent. So our mission is that we believe and we fight for the rights of all citizens in these communities to live, work, and play in a safe and clean environment. That's pretty much what we do in a nutshell. It is really a multi-layered, multi-lens issue when we think about how communities are impacted, when we think about the density, all the different all the sort of social justice issues that are multi-layered in a community. But when it comes to land use and air quality, you really have to look at issues with multiple lenses. And environmental justice is exactly that. We look at policy, We look at state policy. We advocate with the community. We build ground up, bottom up solutions with community based conversations. Um, and that is really what environmental justice is in a nutshell. It's about really working with the people, meeting them halfway, and finding out what the common issues are, and also finding solutions.
Yeah, it's very important work that you do. As you know, I've dedicated my life to working with immigrants, and people have to. They have to. It's not because they want to. They have to move from one place to another. And
Right.
the number one reason the migrants move all over the world, the number one reason is because they want to feed their families.
Right.
Last year was the biggest year in people dying crossing borders that we know of. It was close to 9,000 people crossing from Africa and the Middle East to Europe. And most of those for the same reason. They're looking for work. While here on our border, Mexico, the United States, there was around 300 people. But one of the new trends is people moving because of the environment. So they're environmental migrants because of the climate changes, et cetera, that you're very familiar with. And I was at one of your events. I've been to many of your events. And the last one I recall, maybe 2 years ago, and I was outside and spent some time talking to my good friend who was your keynote speaker that day, Dolores Huerta.
Correct.
And it was at the Jacob Center. And your work is so important. And I believe that with the Environmental Health Coalition, now you have a new role there. What is it that your new role is there? Because I think it involves Barrio Logan.
Well, it was Barrio Logan for a while. Now I moved on to do the regional work, the regional organizing aspect of the work we do. When we think about the county and not necessarily just our environmental justice communities like Barrio Logan, Logan Heights, National City, City Heights, these are communities that are in the 5th percentile of the most impacted, polluted communities in the state of California. My regional work now entails really branching out to the entire region. Some other communities are facing the same issues, and others are just wanting to see how they can support from afar, right? So my job now is to build that bridge, that solidarity bridge. Hence, I think why I accepted the invitation with you today, because I think your organization is ready to be in dialogue, be in conversation with other communities that don't necessarily have the advocacy that we offer to these EJ communities.
I understand it's very important. And with the Barrio Logan situation, I grew up really close to there. I grew up in Golden Hill. And one of the things that I always think about with Barrio Logan, which I love very much, is the injustice of you have, the junkyards and these trucks driving through there and the damage that it does to our children. What type of damage takes place with the disrespect for our community? And I know there's been a lot of advocates like yourself that are fighting for the justice and have been fighting for the justice to say, hey, how about us? How come those junkyards and these trucks driving through communities, how come that doesn't happen in La Jolla or Poway? We know the reason, but what kind of damage takes place for these children that are growing up in that environment?
Well, the cumulative impacts that children face and families face are multi-layered, right? You got poor air quality as a result of being so close and adjacent to a port industry. You have a Navy base there within, hundreds of feet away from community residential areas, where up until now, right, you would see an estimated of 40,000 cars in and out in a given day, right? That's 40,000 for just a Navy base, right? On a 3-lane entrance and exit out of Barrio Logan. Hence all the traffic that would cut through the community, plus the 700 to 1,000 trucks, diesel trucks that would cut through the neighborhood. So there's many layers to it. The other biggest issue in the community is the incompatible land use that the community has to deal with, and that's the result of a outdated community plan from 1978. And Chicano Park is really a testament to really what does it take to build community? What does it take to become the architects of a neighborhood and really advocate for what's needed and what's not needed, right? The Barrio Sillon Quesno tells a powerful story of a master plan that would really become the blueprint of what the neighborhood was going to look like. 1978, the community plan update was a result of community advocating for that to happen so that junkyards could leave the neighborhood. And that was a victory in itself. Hence the 1978 community plan. That was a victory in itself. But not much of the demands were obtained. And one of the biggest issues in the neighborhood is density. A lot of families, especially immigrant families, live in tight spaces, as you probably already know, Enrique, where you see 5 families, 6 family members living in a 1 studio. And then you have rent increases going on. You got gentrification happening. That's another key issue currently that's maybe at the top priority in the neighborhood. Rents skyrocketing because of its proximity to downtown. And let's remember that Barrio Logan has been and has always been, and let's hope it continues to be an immigrant enclave where families who are coming and trying to find that American dream or find a better life could be Barrio Logan could be that destination. Hopefully it remains as one, right? So one of the most pressing issues, and I have to highlight it again, it is displacement, right? It is the rent increase that families are facing. But when you have families living in these tight spaces and you don't have tenants' rights, right, which is another issue, then you have poor air circulation inside people's homes. We know that Barrio Logan, as a result of the poor air quality, has 3 times the rate of asthma ER visits and heart attack ER visits than anywhere else in the county. And now with COVID-19, if you add that to the equation, it doesn't look good, right? You have families, 1 out of every 3 kids has some allergy or respiratory illness. So living in the tight spaces with a lot of family members, with closed ventilation, no ventilation whatsoever, suffering already from respiratory illnesses is a big issue that we at the Environmental Health Coalition take serious. And I've been trying to figure. I've been doing some solution-based approaches for the past couple of years, doing intentional healthy home visits around air circulation, for instance, to improve the breathing inside the home, or just the air circulation in general, the air quality. So it's micro and it's macro, right? So we could talk about the air pollution that's happening as a result of industries, how closed residential areas are, and then the lack of green space. Barrio Logan suffers from 12-acre deficit, right? Of green space. And with this new census coming in 2020, that's why it matters so much. We need to really have a good, precise head count, because the cities and counties have formulas of how much green space should be per the amount of people that live in a neighborhood. So again, Barrio Logan also is a hard to count community. We have a low count on the people who actually live there. And it is faced with environmental injustice that has been decades of neglection, industry that prefers many a times, and it's been proven, profit over people, and that has been the reality for a lot of residents in Barrio Logan, who some have normalized diesel trucks parking in the front of their house idling, have normalized 15, 20-ton trucks going in front of their elementary school. That's right there at Perkins Elementary. So there's a lot of critical issues. And again, environmental justice is multi-layered, and it has to be looked from multiple lenses in order to understand the impact.
Very well said. And there was recently the very sad case that you probably saw in the news. There was one family where it was a family of 6, I believe. The youngest one is like 3 years old. And the parents and the other kids all got COVID-19, except the 3-year-old. The 3-year-old now is with another family member. But they all came down with it, and they're going through the process now. And it's because of that density issue, like you mentioned. They're all so close, and not only are you all so close, many times you're not one family, you're several in a little small space. You have the lead that's in the paint on the walls. You have the lead in the water. You have what you're breathing. So that really does affect the community, like really very few communities in San Diego. But the people that are on the lower end of the economic scale are always the ones that suffer these issues much more than others.
Correct. And you also have
one thing.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, like, if we want to take it back to redlining when communities were segregated, Barrio Logan is one of those communities, and Logan Heights, right? They were part of that redlining districting of a neighborhood where people of color lived, and they were predominantly Italian, right, Black, and Latino, right, or Mexican to be precise.
That's right. Now, so we're talking about Barrio Logan, and one of the great success stories of Barrio Logan that so many people have worked so hard, and this was generations, which in my case, a generation before me, and in your case, a couple of generations before you, what they were able to do with Chicano Park. So when you say Chicano Park, what does Chicano Park mean to you?
Well, Chicano Park, I think in a lot of folks who have had a special relationship with the park and have volunteered one way or another, it is a sacred ground, right? It is a place where a lot of manifestations, a lot of our elders who are now have transitioned into uh, into the next world, right, or have passed away, have left us the baton, right? So it's there's a by being part of Chicano Park, you're part of a mission, right? You're part of a struggle that continues. It's all the way to the bay. Like I mentioned earlier, the master plan of Barrio Logan, Chicano Park was one of the demands, and it had to be taken. It wasn't given, but it doesn't end at Chicano Park. The battle continues, right? So it's a reminder of the environmental injustice that exists in the neighborhood. It's a reminder that the people have to always uh, you know uh, be involved and take action to be able to obtain and be part of the solution, because there's been decades that have proven that if the neighborhood and the community residents are not involved and are not participants, right, and determining their future and the future generations, uh, nothing can be taken for granted more than ever, right? So we need to continue pushing that envelope. Chicano Park is a reminder. It's a platform. It is a sacred space to have dialogue about that blueprint that was left by older generations, and some of them are still alive, like Tommy Camarillo, Josie Talamantes, who I've had the pleasure of working with, and being in relationship with, and some of the veteranos, like you mentioned, Mario Torero, uh, Sal Torres, and and Victor Ochoa. We can keep going on, and they are the oral tradition. They carry that oral tradition that is very important, and also the murals depict that story. But it is an environmental justice testament. It is a victory. Chicano Park, it is a victory of what environmental justice could look like when the people come together and fight for what's right. But it's a reminder also. It's almost like a lighthouse, right? It's a reminder of what the community had envisioned back in the 1960s, 1970s. It's a reminder of anti-displacement. So it is the heart of the neighborhood. Without going too far, Enrique, it is the heart of the neighborhood, and it continues to be a light, a beacon, a beacon of hope and a beacon of prosperity.
Well, it definitely is a beacon, and many of the people that you've mentioned are the pioneers. They're the ones that, thanks to them, we have Chicano Park, and we definitely will have magnificent mujeres such as Josie Talamantes and Tommy Camarillo in the future on Magnificent Mujer, because it's Buen Hombre, Magnificent Mujer. And you were talking about the issues about all the way to the Bay, Barrio C, Yankee Note. So when you were saying that, all I could imagine was those murals that literally say that. Is
Right.
there a mural there in Chicano Park that's your favorite mural? I know there's a lot. It's
No,
almost like saying who's your favorite kid.
I do have to say that at the Barrio Sillon no is one that I've been I'm very fond of, and it's at the entrance for me. It's like the door, it's the gate, to Barrio Chicano Park, and there's a beautiful story behind it, and I think that's why I love it so much. I was so curious that I had to meet with Victor Ochoa and sit down with him and listen to how that came about, right? And the story goes that it was a flyer. Barrio Sillon no was not intended to be a mural. It was a flyer. It was a call for action to all college students in San Diego City College, and to get them out to City Hall to protest and demand a community plan update. That was the old one was from 1970, and they were demanding a new one. So in the 1978, their demand, one of the demands was to displace and force these junkyards to leave the neighborhood. So I was really involved to really trying to understand what that meant for the neighborhood at the time. So much that I put together an event with the support of Victor Ochoa and the Chicano Park Steering Committee, Tommy Camarillo, and not Tommy, but her daughter Tina, and other key leaders in the community, Hector Villegas, Patricia Aguayo, and we had a panel discussion on the past and the present and the future, right? Around, and the title was Barrio C, Yonques No. And the conversation led us to think, well, Barrio C, gentrification, no. and we can keep on going, right? But again, it is that call to action, and hence why that mural for me, it's so relevant more than ever.
Yes, absolutely. And you mentioned some other key people. There's so many names of people. Yeah, that Victor Ochoa, the last time I saw him was probably maybe a month before this whole situation happened, maybe 2 months. And yeah, we got to get people like that to tell their stories, because I think a lot of things that happen
Right.
is we take them for granted. Oh yeah, well we'll hear their story later. Well, that later is suddenly gone. Just this past week, I was talking to the wife of my best friend who passed away around 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And to me, he is the icon of human rights, not only in San Diego, but along the entire border.
Yeah.
And his name is Roberto Martinez, rest in peace. So Roberto's wife, Yolanda, and we were chatting, reminiscing about, things that we've done together, especially Roberto and I and others. And the whole time I was thinking, we got to get their stories down. We got to get their stories, like the Chicano Park Steering Committee and the museum, the Chicano Park Museum and Cultural Center will house, because I think too many times, and I'm more guilty than most, we take it for granted. Oh yeah, well,
Right.
tomorrow, and then tomorrow is too late. And I often think about the situation with my dad. I was always thinking, oh yeah, well, and I got some of it, but I really wanted to really get a thorough history documented, recorded. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to do it. And if he was alive today, he'd be 100 years old this year.
Wow.
So yeah, these stories are so important for our kids, for our grandkids, to document them. How come that mural is up there, like you just explained? What does this mean? Because a lot of times there's misinterpretations, and that's why for us it's very important to speak to the muralist and say, what were you thinking when you did this? What was the process? How about those Aztec dancers? How did you get into Aztec dance, etc.? So that's something that we're going to be doing throughout the year on Buen Hombre, Magnificent Mujer. Yeah, some of those magnificent mujeres, definitely. You mentioned Patricia and Tina and so many others. When I say so many others, I don't mean that there's thousands of them, because there isn't. There's a group, a very powerful group, and we got to recognize them for what the ones that have passed on did, and the ones that are still with us are doing, and then the future generations, of course, the young people. So if people want to find out more about the Environmental Health Coalition, maybe that's what they're calling. Maybe like when I've taken the student groups out, or I've gone and spoken to students all over the place, all over the country and other countries, people get inspired sometimes, and they'll say, I'm really inspired in doing something. And maybe it has to do with immigration, but maybe it has to do with the environment, or working with the elders, or whatever it is. So if somebody wants to get involved in the environment because that's their passion, how do they get involved with the Environmental Health Coalition?
Well, I'll say a couple things. One was just to go back real quick on that story on the Barrio Sin Que No. For those who are listening, go to our website on Facebook, on their videos, look up Environmental Health Coalition on Facebook, and under videos, you'll see that panel discussion. So we filmed it, we recorded, and that's something that I wanted to make sure we did, because like you say, this oral tradition, these stories are getting lost. So I've been very intentional about making sure that the work gets documented. So for those who are interested, you can go ahead and look it up. But how can you stay involved in the work we do? How can you really engage in the work we're doing now? Right now, it's an interesting time because there's so much moving pieces. There's a lot of things that are being, put to hold. However, Environmental Health Coalition is trying to build our presence more online more than ever. And feel free to go to our website, go to our membership, and sign up for our membership. And be sure that we'll be sending you newsletters, monthly newsletters. We have a Talks Informer, which is a monthly newsletter about the work we're doing in different neighborhoods in National City, Logan Heights, Tijuana, and also Barrio Logan and Logan Heights. Recently we've been doing a lot of work on the air monitoring in Barrio Logan. We've been very involved in that, along with the truck ordinance in Barrio Logan. And in National City, it's been, making sure that the Paradise Creek apartments and parks and get accomplished. So it's the integration piece. So people can still get very involved in the work we're doing. We were just finished an electoral cycle. We have a voter campaign called United to Vote. We need a lot of volunteers when it comes to that, because sometimes we're talking to voters who have no clue about environmental injustice issues that might be in the ballot, right? That could either be in favor or against them in their own neighborhood. So we make sure we provide that that narrative and that story, and we provide the education. So for those who are listening, I would encourage you all to just either sign up through the newsletter, but more importantly, through the membership. And if you're inclined to just be a donor with the Environmental Health Coalition, you can donate $5 a month, $5 a month, and you could be a donor in the work we do. Right now, one of the things that we're actually focusing on, Enrique, is trying to work with promotoras and community leaders who have been involved in the organization for years, some for decades. EHC would actually turn 40 years just about now. We would have had our annual celebration this week. Unfortunately, because of that, it got postponed till August. However, one of the things that we're focusing on right now, it's really working with our promotoras and our community leaders to provide them with the technology they need to navigate the current world we're living in from home. So we want to continue doing that. We want to provide, trainings via Zoom, via, wherever is needed, and provide them technology as well. And that's just right in the situation we're in now. As we move forward in the electoral cycle in November, our hope is to be able to, again, provide leadership trainings, as we call them SALTA, Salud Ambiental, Líderes Tomando Acción. It's a 6-week free leadership institute where moms and fathers can come and there's childcare and dinner provided for them, where they really go through an environmental justice 101 schooling. And we really provide them the tools to navigate how to be involved in their planning groups, how to talk to their council members, how to identify key issues and common issues in your neighborhood, and how to become advocates, right? So there's a lot of work that we do, and I think volunteers, more than anything, people who want to stay in touch in the work we do, because we're also part of a state coalition called CEJA, California Environmental Justice Alliance. So by tapping into the work we do, you tap into a statewide efforts that are being done throughout the state on environmental justice policy. And that includes, issues from air quality, assuring that we have the best air quality in our neighborhoods, to assuring that funding that comes from cap and trade, right? That funding that's at a state level gets prioritized in neighborhoods that are most impacted by pollution and surrounded by freeways, right? So we're working on multiple levels here, and I encourage you all, if maybe you're not that informed, maybe you're not so informed of what's happening at the state level, maybe you're not so informed what's happening locally. If you're curious, if you're interested, highly encourage you all to just sign up, and you'll be learning a lot about what environmental justice looks like in our neighborhoods here in San Diego.
And the work that you're doing is so important. And Gente Unida, you hit 3 of the focuses of Gente Unida, which is kids, looking out for our kids, education, and making sure we get people to vote this November, because this year is a key year for the census, and also making sure to get people to vote. And of course, talking about a great example about the environment and how our generations, mine, yours, have not done as much as we should have done. A great example, one of my personal heroes, is Greta Thunberg, and what she's done in getting out there and telling people about, hey, what are we doing? Right. There is no tomorrow. We got to make sure that we change the environment today. So, Jorge, where can people find out this information? What is your website for the Environmental Health Coalition?
Well, yes, please look us up, www.environmentalhealth.org. That's environmentalhealth.org. Find us out there. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're more active, most likely, in Twitter and Facebook these days. And you can find out more information about what we're doing there. We also have a page for those interested in Chicano Park. We have a Chicano Park Herb Garden. We've hosted workshops there. Some of us are the stewards of that garden. The Environmental Health Coalition is the co-sponsor. Of course, all under the Chicano Park Steering Committee. And over the past few years, youth and families would come and be part of the workshops that we host there. We talk about open space and green spaces because we need more of it in the neighborhood. So that's another place to be engaged in the work we do, aside from going to our website and looking at the various campaigns that we manage. So yeah, stay up to date either by liking us on Facebook, going to our Twitter account, Environmental Health there, or going directly to our website and subscribe to our monthly newsletter or become a member. Even better.
Yeah.
Well, with technology, we've been doing a lot of air monitoring outside and inside people's homes.
Okay.
And we've been finding out through these air monitors that we bring inside people's homes that sometimes the air quality is 3 times worse than outside. It has to do with the poor air ventilation. Like I said, they live in tight spaces. So we do monitoring. We have a research direct the Environmental Health Coalition for 30 years, collecting data, and that helps us sometimes build policy. So we track data. We've done workshops with youth where we go to schools and they get to hold air monitors. We walk around the neighborhood. We see that how graphs are impacted by trucks going by and by having a mechanic shop next to a residential home. The impacts of that particulate matter up being in the air, ultra fine particulate matter is what I'm referring to. So that's how we've been using for I guess 2 decades at the very least at EHC technology. And EHC has been pivotal to creating, for instance, the Cal Environmental Screen, which is now a legislative tool that's being used at the state level to prioritize millions of dollars for funding. EHC really was one of the creators and co-curators of that tool that now it's being used, right? So technology plays a central role in the work we do when it comes to data. And now because of COVID-19, it's how do we provide, get our community and members in our neighborhoods, equipped with the tools. Not everybody has a laptop. Not everybody has a cell phone with the smart technology that a lot of our phones have, or not a lot of them know how to use it, right? Or even Zoom. So we want to be able to train our folks in the neighborhood and our communities to be prepared, whether it's to continue being civically engaged or in general, be able to apply for jobs, or the new norm could be a different reality. So we're trying to be ahead of the curve as much as possible when it comes to that. In regards to, you mentioned that your other question was around culture.
It was about the challenge of how can tourism help? I know the whole thing you talked about gentrification and how that can be problematic, rents rising. And I know that, Chicano Park is a center of the community, but it's also can be a center for tourism, right? And that it's a challenge because you're bringing people in, but is it really contributing to the welfare of all the people? And how do you see that as an opportunity or a challenge, or how could that be navigated, especially with a new museum coming?
I think it's a double-edged sword, but I think for one, it's important to have tourism, right? Stimulates the economy of local businesses there. One. It also, the danger of that, it makes it more attractive, and then you have more developers and investors really putting, having, dollar signs in their eyes when they look at property. Property value goes up as Battle Logan becomes more trendy per se. So I think there's a fine line there of how do you really engage with the neighborhood. I think really just coming with respect and being sensitive to the space and not assuming it's just another typical neighborhood. This community has a very strong, vibrant community. There's a lot of people whose eyes and ears are on the streets. I think coming in with the right approach by asking the right questions about the history of the neighborhood, I think is important. Knowing its history, it's crucial for you to be able to have an opinion to some degree. There's a lot of history in that neighborhood, and I've learned it in the 4 years that I was there. I pretty much scratched the surface, to be quite honest, but I got deep enough to understand that the roots that are very deep. Families have got involved in the social justice work as a result of displacement, right? Justices. So there is a strong resiliency in the neighborhood, and it's beautiful because people are still there, which remains. But it's also in a vulnerable place today. When people go there, it's how can I support versus how can I just purchase or give money. It's more than money and purchasing. It's how can I donate my time or how can I volunteer. Nothing can be taken for granted. The neighborhood is really going through a strong transition with gentrification. Gentrification is already there. It's not a matter of when, it's already there. So it's about how can people help. So it SALTA translates into environmental justice leaders taking action. Salud ambiental, líderes tomando acción. Is our, I believe it's turning like 20 plus years, a leadership institute where more than, I think at this time, I think there's like 7,000 community members from our neighborhood that have graduated. Some are in planning groups, some are in commissions. Some are now city council members, some are state legislators. So there's a lot of members who have come through our leadership
Right.
institute where you get the one-on-one on environmental justice.
Mm.
You leave there equipped with tools and a sense of belonging to the organization.
Well, we want to thank you, Jorge, for your great work, and that way people can look at your website, Facebook, Instagram, etc., find out more information, because change begins with us. And you've been doing a great job. The Environmental Health Coalition has been doing a great job. We thank you, and we want to remind everybody the importance of the work that they're doing, the importance of the work of a national treasure, much due to Josie Talamante's great work, of Chicano Park, and to support Chicano Park Steering Committee. And we're going to be raising funds for the Chicano Park Museum and Cultural Center all year long. So Jorge, thank you very much. Stay safe. Thanks for making this a better world for all of us, because it's up to us as individuals to really put the work out there, and and like we always say, love is an action. It's not just a word. And what Jorge Gonzalez is doing and the Environmental Health Coalition is action. You know, not just talking about the change, but making that change possible. So thank you very much. Que viva Chicano Park, y muchas gracias. Stay tuned for our weekly episodes on Gente Unida, Magnificent Mujer. We're on Stitcher, TuneIn, Apple Podcast. Of course, we have buenhombre.org, genteunida.net, and we have magnificentmujer.org, where you can find out more information or tune in. Muchas gracias, Jorge, y un abrazo muy fuerte, virtual al momento, pero hay que seguir adelante, porque sabemos que el amor.
Gracias, Enrique. Yeah, y viva Chicano Park. Much love to you. Thanks for the invitation once again.
Muchas gracias.